Welcome back to Tim's Kitchen. If this is your first time here, my name is Tim, and I am a newly retired educator living in Chattanooga. And every once in a while, I like to share some things that I cook. I am on a carnivore diet, and we'll talk about that more in another video. I did a video earlier about cooking a ribeye, but ribeyes are really expensive. And so I'm going to show you today how you can make a quasi ribeye out of chuck steak. Today I'm going to work with meat that I can afford. I have here a ribeye. I got this from Fresh Market, and this ribeye is $22 a pound right now. This is prime choice, and so it is quite expensive. And this was right at, it's 10 ounces. It was $21.99 for the steak. This is an excellent steak. Don't get me wrong. If I could eat ribeye every day on the carnivore diet, ribeye is what I would eat. What I have here now is a chuck roast. This steak is thin enough that I can cook it as a steak, but it needs a little preparation. So that's what we're going to do today. With this chuck steak, you will see that it has quite a bit of marbling, and that's just the fat that runs through it, which is what I'm looking for on meat. The fat is flavor. The difficulty with the chuck steak is that it can be tough and stringy. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do a dry brine marinade overnight. And before we do that, I'm going to take this little tool right here that has some teeth in it. Let me put it down here where you can probably see this a little better in this video. And I am just going to jab this all over on both sides to sort of tenderize the meat. Now this is, you can get these pretty much anywhere. I got this one at Academy Sports. They have a great barbecue section there where you can get all kinds of stuff. And I just want to make sure that I get plenty of holes in it. Now you can also do this with a fork, but it's a lot more tedious. So I'm just going to turn this over. Now the other thing about this steak is it will absolutely fall apart. There's no question that it will fall apart. If I were to try to cook it like this as a steak, I would be sadly disappointed because I would never get it to do what I want it to do. So I'm going to take a little bit of twine, and I am just going to try to find the middle of this steak, and I'm going to tighten it up pretty tight. It's been a long time since I've had to do this, so hopefully I won't make an idiot out of myself on this video. But I'm just going to try to leave this as close to the center of the steak as possible. Now, for a dry brine, all I'm going to do is put some kosher salt. And again, it doesn't matter what brand it is. I happen to have Morton's, but kosher salt. I'm going to put the salt on this steak, and then I'm going to let it sit in the refrigerator overnight. It needs to sit at least 4 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours, doesn't really matter. The steak will change color because, it's going to be exposed to the air. I'm not going to cover it up, but I am going to put quite a bit of salt. I won't salt it again when I get done, but I just want enough salt that's going to kind of go into the meat. Now I'm actually, when I turn the video off here, I'm actually going to dry brine this ribeye as well. I'll cook it for breakfast in the morning. But what we're going to do is we're going to put this on a plate. Somebody had asked about my dishes. These are the square dishes that I have in my cabinet. I got these from World Market. They're not very expensive. And we're just going to move this over here. And if you wanted to put this on like a rack over a baking pan or something to where the air can get around it on both sides, that would work as well. What I will do in the morning is I will flip it to let the other side of the steak have some air as well. And then we're just going to pop this in here, and I'm going to let that sit overnight. So tomorrow we'll come back and finish this video, and I'm just going to cook it like I cooked the ribeye. I'm going to put it in the oven for a while, then we're going to sear it, and then we're going to enjoy it. Well, it's the next morning, so I'm going to have a little cup of coffee. Hope that's okay. These steaks have been brining overnight. And I want to show you what they look like this morning. Now, I want to remind you something I left out early on. This is a prime ribeye, which means that it is full of marbling throughout, and it should be really, really tender. We did tenderize it, and we did dry brine it to tenderize it some more. This was $21.99 for 10 ounces. Now, I don't always buy steaks like this. I bought this one for this video. But typically I'm spending $17.99 or $18.99 a pound for ribeye steak. But I can't afford that every day. I couldn't afford that every day when I was working. So now that I'm retired, I have to offset that. This has to be a treat, and I have to offset it with something that is more sustainable. So the chuck roast, this is 2 pounds, 10 ounces, 2 pounds. This is $5.99 a pound. So the chuck roast altogether, I did save this so I wouldn't forget to talk about this. This was $12.37 for this cut of meat. Now, it's not ever going to be as tender as the ribeye, but by pounding it with, these spikes and putting the kosher salt on it overnight to let it brine, it will be more tender. And if you cut against the grain, we'll talk about that after we've cooked it, cut against the grain, it'll be even more tender than that. This is 2 pounds of meat. This is at least 2 meals for me, maybe a little more than 2 meals, but typically I am eating a pound of beef when I sit down, especially for breakfast. It's only, it's not even 5 o'clock in the morning yet. It's too early to cook this. I'm going to put it back in the refrigerator, but I wanted to make this section of the video before I devour this. Okay, so I pulled this back out of the refrigerator. I've let it sit here on the counter for at least 30 minutes to try to knock a little bit of the chill off before I put it in the oven. Like in my ribeye video, in case you haven't watched that, I will try to put a card up here or over here somewhere, or a link in the description, or both. So I usually cook my steaks in the oven first and get them done in the middle the way I want them, and then I just sear them quickly on the outside. So I'm going to put this in the oven. It's at 250 degrees. It would probably take more than 30 minutes, but I'm going to start at 25 minutes, and then I'm going to take the temperature every few minutes or so until I get to about 110, and then I'm going to pull it out and let it rest for about 10 minutes. So let's pop it in the oven. All right, it's been about 45 minutes, and this thing is ready. So I'm going to pop it over here on the skillet. I've had it resting here for about 10 minutes, just to sort of let all the juices come back up into the steak. And I've got my skillet really, really hot. And that's the sound we want to hear. So I'm going to take a couple of minutes and brown this thing up. I'll bring it back over here and show you what it looks like when I get done. So this is what it looks like in the skillet. And you can see it's very nice and brown. The butter has really done its magic here, and I'm going to see if I can get this out. Now you see how that's pulling apart there? If I didn't have that tied together, that would be an absolute mess at the moment. I have to untie it, but I'm going to let that rest for just a few minutes. And we'll come back in about 10 minutes. All right, so we have this done here. It's been sitting here a while. I'm going to cut this string off from around it, I think. Looks like it's mostly come off from around. Oh, there it is. Okay. That has held it together while it was cooking, but of course, I can't hold it together with that while I'm cutting. So we're just going to sort of cut down through this. And so here is, see if I can pick this piece up. Here is a piece. You can see it. I typically like it a little redder than that. It's a little too done for me, but that's okay. It's not going to stop me from eating it. And the only thing that I've done to season this, again, is I put the kosher salt on it to dry brine it, and then I put a little bit of pepper on it before I cooked it, and that's it. I am going to like that. So if you're looking for a cheap piece of steak to cook, the chuck roast is a good place to go. You just have to be aware that you're going to have to prepare it a little bit. So get something like this to tenderize it, dry brine it overnight at least, 12 hours minimum. Cook it slow in the oven and then sear it really fast on the stove. And I think you'll be very pleased with what you wind up with. Let me know in the comments what you think, and we will see you next time.